This is the Biz News Podcast, one-on-one conversations with experts in business and personal development.
For leaders trying to get their workers to be more engaged, there are lessons to be learned from the classroom, specifically from author and educator Marilyn Carroll. In this Biz News interview, Ms. Carroll offers tips that can be used by teachers and also business leaders. Well, we're doing this meeting by Zoom, and you probably have as much experience fiddling around with Zoom as anybody, and even more because as a teacher, you've had to keep students engaged, even though you can't get your hands around their little scrawny necks to make them pay attention. So how on earth do you do this, Marilyn?
Well, I think Douglas, you do a great job of having some lively interaction, and that's what it really takes. Students don't like boring things. They don't like people who are not engaged in what they're doing or not even passionate about what they're doing. So I do a lot of, even though I work with the film industry, I find myself doing a lot of acting as well to bring out the best in my students.
So you have a script, or is this all ad lib acting?
All ad lib acting, because it depends on what's at the moment, how people are reacting, what questions they may have, what they may be going through. Right now, we have so many students going through various crises that you have to be able to react. For example, today I received a student saying they have to have emergency surgery because something happened with their COVID vaccine and it turned something else in, and you gotta move with that. Because if they quit at this particular time, this is mid-term, and so they lose all those credits.
Now, some people have described your approach as professional, but just a little crazy.
Yes.
How do you know when just a little crazy becomes just too much crazy?
Well, I think they say crazy because they're like, how in the world is she doing all of that? And on my side, I just happen to have insights into technology. I'm working on another technology degree. Yes.
Would you give us some examples of what you're talking about?
Yes. So I can build bots that look at all of my discussion posts and tell me which ones and alert me to which ones I need to respond to based on the tone in those discussion posts. I have bots that can look at and tell me, hey, here's what's going on with your students today. You need to check with Paul or Sue. It's like having an assistant in my back pocket that helps me to really maneuver education in a different way as an instructor.
Hey, that's just astounding. Did you write the programs yourself, or are these things that our listeners or viewers could say, well, I could buy that too?
Well, I wrote the programs with my fellow researcher, Dr. Kyle Morton. And Dr. Morton is an engineer as well as a computer technology major. And so I'm like, okay, I got tired of him talking to me about things or waiting for him to do things. So as any woman would do, I went out and I said, you know what, I'm gonna learn this stuff too, so that I can help out. I knew how to basically write a program. We learned that in high school back in the day, but I didn't know how to carry it forward. And so now I'm much more open to doing things and carrying it forward. And based on our research, we did research over the last 7 years. And I met my fellow researcher on an airplane flight from Atlanta to Texas. And based on that, we just started talking, and I had them all over him and some others over to my house. And I said, listen, there's a better way to do teaching, and let's figure it out. And so from there, we've been figuring it out.
What are some of the big things that you guys have discovered that work?
Oh, emojis. The most simplest thing is one of the biggest things. And so when a teacher is talking, especially teachers do a lot of emailing back and forth since we can't see people in person a lot of times, or if we have office hours and they can't see us, creating a emojicon or emoji that shows how we're feeling when we're talking to them really is helpful for them. And they even create, a lot of students will create those same types of emojicons and emojis to communicate back. So we're using a lot of the hip things that students, younger students are using with older students that's really working.
I have trouble putting a smiley face on email. Would any of these
That
work?
matters. It really matters. And we use systems technology to really tell us, I scan the conversation, like I said earlier, what the student is having with me. And from that, I can get how that student is really feeling about what they're saying. I can get so much information just from a writing sample from a student.
It sounds like you're teaching in the year 2050 as opposed to 2021. Give us an idea of where you think education is going, especially as it uses interactive media such as Zoom or Skype or WebEx, whatever.
Wow, yes. We're working on one project, for example, that brings the best educator possible to the forefront. Meaning I don't have to wait, even if I live in my nice town in southern Birmingham somewhere or Alabama somewhere, I can bring that teacher, the best teacher in this process, to Alabama through AI to teach that class. Whereas I can have the teacher that's on ground do more of the coaching and the mentoring to the student. The thing that we found a long time ago, and many research projects have also found, that every student is different. And based on that difference, you got to be able to meet that student where they're needed. So you can have a student that, for example, you can have 5 students in your class, and those 5 students in your class may need to be educated in a different manner than the rest of the student, but the same content needs to be given to them. Well, I'm just one person. In order for me to give it to the students 5, educate them in 5 different ways, I have to have technology to help me with that.
What do you see in terms of in-person education? How will this work for once kids are back in school with a teacher in the front of the classroom?
Well, I think it's in-person education will be the same, and we have some of the same problems that we have online. Even more so now, students' mind are they're very distracted about things, and you have so much in the entertainment world that they do pay attention to. So you have to bring entertainment into the classroom in a way that is not distractive to the educational process, but it's entertaining to that particular student. So again, it goes to my name is Marilyn, and I need education down this particular path, not the path you may be accustomed to administering it.
It sounds like you have some really radical ideas that in the pretty conservative world of American public education might be hard to get across. What's been your experience?
It is pretty hard to get across, but you got to take baby steps, And along with taking baby steps, I'm known from business. My background is first and foremost business. And the thing I learned from business is if I can give somebody an ROI that is better than what they have now, I can get people to come over.
And how do you stop the fidgeting in that 4th grade classroom?
Well, the fidgeting in the 4th grade classroom is that we have a lot of students now with ADHD challenges. And so the way to stop that fidgeting is to engage that student early on and, hey, here's what we're going to talk about. Little John needs to know that this is about Little John. Little John could care less about Jane, Sally, Sue, Paul, and the rest of them. Little John cares about Little John. And so we have to let Little John know that you're about to get into some things, Little John, that you love doing.
As you have developed this stuff, Marilyn, what have been it hasn't all been success, I'm sure, because nobody
No.
developing something is entirely successful. What have been some of your flops and what have you learned from them?
Oh my gosh. Some of my flops I've learned from is the mere fact of thinking one size fits all in the beginning when we started this. I thought, okay, they just need this. And I take surveys and things, assessments, and I say, oh, that's all they need. But that wasn't all they needed. And there were other things. It was the individual. It's like, okay, my name is, my grandbaby name is Braylon. And Braylon comes over and talked to me, and I'm trying to work with her when she is out of school to still give her schoolwork and keep her learning. And Braylon says, "No, Grandma, that's not going to work for me because I like this." And then I'm noticing why I'm talking to Braylon. I live in a high rise in both Texas as well as Atlanta when I'm here, and Braylon is constantly focused on what's on the ground. I mean, she has an eyesight that's impeccable. And at the same time, she has a wondering eye that says, how does that work? She's good with directions. She's good with all these other things. And so the way to get to Braylon is through those things that Braylon loves. You can still produce content for her or get the content to an area where she uses her strengths in order to learn that particular topic. And that's the thing you do with fourth graders. You make them excited to be in that classroom with you. I can't wait to get to Dr. Carroll's class because I know that when I get there, I'm going to have a blast today. I'm going to show her how I did this, how I built something else, how I took something in the kitchen and I made this recipe. And from that, I learned one of the elements of science.
Now, Marilyn, you've written a book about all of this. It's just come out. Tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about that.
Yes, I wrote a book called The Diary of Online Professor. I was sitting during the pandemic and I was like, you know what? This thing has gotten rough. And my church came to me, as well as the school, as well as others, and said, hey, can you help our people prepare for this thing after the pandemic is over? And I said, sure. And so I had an audience of various age groups, from young to very senior people. And I was like, okay, some of them didn't know technology. Some knew some technology. The younger ones knew everything about technology, or if they didn't, they weren't afraid and they went ahead and used these things. And so it was great in that I was able to see a lot of things. And I said, I gotta write this thing. I gotta write about this. I'll write about my journey as an online professor, but in the grand scheme of things, I want to write about all the educational things that are happening at this particular moment. So in this book, I even share my journey as a student, as a child of a 14-year-old person just turned 14, and how I made it out, and that the birth of a student could be anybody, and that you have to bring that person into the fruition of learning and developing themselves into that magnificent person they want to be.
Quite a goal, that's for sure, for teachers, parents, and all sorts of leaders. Now,
Yes.
where can our listeners and viewers get more information? I'm betting you might have a website.
I do. As a matter of fact, my team is putting together a website just for the book, Diary of an Online Professor. And so if you can't find it out there now, you can find it later. You can also find me on drmarilyncarroll.com. That's DrMarilynCarroll.com.
And Marilyn, what would you like to tell our listeners and viewers that we haven't had a chance to talk about?
I think the biggest thing I want to tell listeners is education. Learning is just so powerful right now, especially with everything that we're going through. It's extremely important that we stay in the game of learning. Again, no matter what age or whatever, if you have kids, your children need to see you learning, and they need to see that experience and see that excitement that you have about learning, that you can share with them and talk to them about various things that's happening in the world. Even with COVID, the variant, the Delta variant, and all of that, those are opportunities to share and grow. And we talk a lot about STEM or STEAM. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. And STEAM is science, technology, education, as well as the arts and math. And so how all of those things fit into the marketplace is extremely important because we use them all the time. We use STEM as parents, and when we're in the kitchen, if we're the men out golfing, or all the things that we kind of characterize or used to characterize as a man's role. Now we kind of in unbalance of what role is whose these days, but using STEM or STEAM and all of the aspects of life, we just have to show our children how we're using that. And I think we'll have more scientists that come out of that equation.
You've been watching the Biznews Podcast. We welcome your input. Send your email to editor@biznews.com. Thanks for watching.